Hello and welcome to the Celtic Way morning briefing. For those of you who tuned in to our post-match special last night, clearly another quiz defeat has got the better of Tony, so he's relaxing, chilling out, so you're stuck with me hosting. I am, however, joined live from Austria by Herald sports writer Graeme McGarry. How's it going, Graeme? All good?
Yeah, all good, mate. Not too shabby to be staying in Vienna. I'm okay.
Now, before we get into it properly, as you all know, I'll just draw your attention to the screen. It's up there just now. We are, of course, sponsored by the One Football app. The link is in the description, and it's basically your one-stop shop for football news, fixtures, stats, scores, etc., etc. It's on Apple and Android stores as well as being completely free, so give that a download for us. On top of that, or at the bottom of that, actually, the strap along the bottom there tells you now that it's pre-season. Now that pre-season's underway, our latest deal for the website is £3 for 3 months. So that will take you through the start of the season, past the first derby, right up until Celtic are halfway through their Champions League group campaign. So give us a go. Right, Graeme, now that that's out of the way, we'll go on to what it's like on pre-season with Celtic shortly. But first of all, that game last night, 7-0 win, 6 different scorers, 19 players used. What did you make of it?
Yeah, I think you've got to kind of take into account the sort of standard of the opposition, I guess. But at the same time, I think it was a real good illustration of the sort of strength and depth that this Celtic squad have got at the moment. I think there's about 35 guys over here, including the kind of younger players. And normally, the first game of pre-season, you tend to find it's sort of just the younger guys who are on. But you look at that team last night, it still had a kind of core of experienced, really, really kind of top-level players. You had Hatate and Joe Hart and Adeguchi was on. I think they're all kind of eager to see what he can do after his kind of injury-interrupted campaign last year. Even guys like Mikey Johnston, James Forrest. So, if this is the kind of de facto second or third string, it's still pretty strong. And I think Andrew's kind of delighted with what he saw, not just from those experienced guys, but the younger guys as well.
Frank Brennan coming in with a wee reality check, as he tends to do. These are pre-season friendlies against the very poorest of opposition, for goodness sake. So please let us all keep everything in context in terms of the size of the wins. That's actually in response to Sean McFadden's comment in the chat there, saying that the next one's going to be 14 now. So Frank with a wee bit of reality check there. But I think it kind of should go without saying that the caveat to a lot of this is obviously the first opposition were third division Austrian side, isn't it, Graeme?
Aye, definitely. I mean, I think you saw kind of early on in the game that they were way out of their depth. Celtic were kind of scoring it well. It was 6-0 at half time. Let's not forget, before Ange made a lot of changes. So, yeah, I mean, you've got to throw that caveat in. But Frank, we've all been waiting for the football for about a month now. Come on, let's get carried away a wee bit. Why not?
51 days, not that I'm counting. But Alexandro Bernabei.
Yeah,
good debut. Even again, considering the level of opposition.
Yeah, I think MD tuning into that game last night would have been quite impressed with what they saw from Bernabei. I think what was kind of striking was how quickly he sort of adapted to the Celtic style, if you like, under Ange. He was playing very centrally at times, coming in, looked very comfortable on the ball. Great turn of pace as well, and he actually probably should have scored. He got into a great position. And the keeper made a brilliant save from him, in fairness. But I think in terms of a first run out, 45 minutes, he's not obviously played with his teammates before. I thought he did really well, and I think it's quite exciting to see what he can bring to the team. But there's no harm to Greg Taylor, who's done fantastic. But I think you can see he's going to have a real kind of competition in his hands for that left back spot.
Rob McEwen coming in, Bernabei looked great. Fit for the Ange style. That's kind of what you're saying, that he's already embracing that kind of inverted responsibility, because there's a lot of responsibility placed on fullbacks in Ange Postecoglou's system, as we know. Greg Taylor maybe surprised a lot of people last year by how well he adapted and how well he rose to that responsibility. But ultimately what you're saying there bodes well for me, for the fact that it means there's 2 starting level left backs that would be there, which is ultimately the aim for most of the positions in the squad.
Yeah, definitely. And I think Ange said after the game about Bernabei, he was trying to kind of temper expectations a wee bit, but he was kind of waxing lyrical about his qualities. And he says, that's the reason he's here. They've scouted him for a particular reason. He ticks so many of the boxes that Ange looks for in a left back, in terms of being, comfortable in the ball and being able to take part in the play from a central position. So, yeah, I think all in all, that was perhaps that, and maybe the performance of Mikey Johnston were the two things that were the most kind of positive of the night.
There's more than a few comments about the youngsters. I'll put this one up from Sean McFadden. Perhaps some of the quality youngsters can play a part rather than spending big money on transfers. What did you make of the youngsters that get game time last night, Graeme? Specifically the what I would probably say the five that are kind of Celtic B team, Celtic youth products. So Johnny Kenny, Rocco Vata, Owen Moffat, Boston Lowell, Josh Steady. Actually, there's two more. Actually, Ben Summers, Matthew Anderson as well, who we didn't really get the chance to touch on last night.
Yeah, I mean, I think fans always do like to see, young players coming through, and I think it's been one of the kind of black marks against Celtic, not just Celtic, a lot of teams in Scotland, in terms of producing young talent. I think, Kenny got 2 goals. He looked good. He led the line well. I would say he still needs to kind of develop physically a wee bit if he's going to lead the line for Celtic. Still looks a wee bit slight. But the guys who come in didn't do themselves any harm. I think Bosun Lawal, I mean, he's some unit, strong in the tackle, but he did get caught a couple of times positionally. I think his passing needs a wee bit of work as well. Sometimes a wee bit rash, and trying passes that aren't really on. So yeah, all in all, I was impressed by all the youngsters. I think you look at Rocco Vata's finish. I think he's going to be an exciting talent for the future, but I think maybe it's just a little bit too early for these boys just at the minute.
I think I was quite impressed with Boston Lowell. I do agree that certainly near the end when Viner Victoria actually got a chance, it was kind of through his avenue in the centre of defence that it came from. But I think it's interesting you mentioned playing passes it might not be on, because there's a few times, well, more than a few times last season, as Postecoglou mentioned about the importance of the resilience, and I don't mean resilience as in sitting at the edge of your box, but resilience as in if something doesn't quite work, rather than not trying it again, having that kind of resilience and confidence to try it again and hope that it works, but do it better the next time, that kind of thing. Yeah. And I wonder if there's an element of that to it, in terms of trying to make a point to the manager that he will do that, even if maybe the pass actually wasn't on. Because this kind of time in pre-season for players like Boston Lowell will be more about catching the manager's eye and getting in his thoughts than it will be the actual whether he keeps a clean sheet, that kind of thing. Yeah,
it's an interesting point. I think all these young guys have got to commit to what Ange is wanting them to do. So, in fairness to Boston Lawal, as you say, he didn't let the head go down. He kept trying these passes, even when they weren't coming off, and you've got a few goals. There was about 20 to 30 Celtic fans there last night, and no matter where you get fans, you're always going to get groans when passes go astray, even in a pre-season friendly. But he kept at it, and yeah, I guess he's trying to show that, not just show Ange, but he's trying to learn that way as well. I think he's got to stick to those principles, and if he is going to have a long-term future in the Celtic team, then he's going to have to try and become that kind of player anyway. So no, I take your point on that. I think there's definitely something there with Boston Lawal. He's got all the kind of raw ingredients of a kind of good, strong centre half, but yeah, he just has to be a wee bit more composed on the ball, I feel.
Charlie McGarry coming in with a comment that I actually made this point last night as well. Apart from the performance of Kenny, Charlie says he was very impressed with the aggression and commitment of Josh Dady. I agree with that. I did mention that last night. He wasn't on for all that long. He was on playing right back, 16 years of age. I still don't think that was a foul that he got given against him for the slide tackle. I think it looked worse than what it was. Because he went in full pelt, but he went in one-footed and nudged the ball away. I thought, I thought he made an impression, as good an impression as you can make against that level of opposition at that age with limited game time. And right backs maybe well stocked, so it's maybe not something that's going to come and bear fruit with first team football. But he's not even played that much for the B team either, so it's potentially accelerating that part of it for him.
Yeah, it's funny. We can hear a couple of the Celtic backroom staff talking behind us. I don't want to tell tales out of school, but when Josh came on, they were very excited to see what he was going to do. And the game had hit a wee bit of a lull at that point. Celtic were cruising and a lot of subs getting made and that kind of thing. But as you say, he came on and he made an immediate impact. And he's obviously pacey, but for his age, he looks strong as well. And as you say, as Charlie says, they are very aggressive. And committed. So, again, this time of year is all about seeing these guys. You might not see them again until this time next year. But it's good to know those guys are bubbling away under the surface, and I think the Celtic B team will be an interesting watch next year, because there does seem to be a kind of crop of young guys who, maybe a couple of years ago there was a lot of kind of jersey fillers out in the Austrian tours or the pre-season tours, guys who were coming along to make up the numbers but were never really going to threaten the first team. And I don't think you can say that about this group. I think there's a good few of them have got a real good chance, even though, in my opinion, I think it is a wee bit early for most of them.
David Gillespie, with a comment about your comment about Kenny needing to develop physically. He says he needs to do that so people like Christopher Julian don't rob him of a hat trick again. It was very unlucky.
At the time, I actually thought that was a wee bit out of line, Big Chris. And the thing was, he wheels away celebrating as well, and I think that was the third or fourth. So
I know. Yeah, he just came flying out of nowhere. He did start the move, to be fair to him, Chris Julian, but you just saw the big 6'5" frame just coming in, and Johnny Kenny going off. Right, okay.
A wee lesson for the young man there, I think. But I thought Kenny played well. Julian is an interesting one. He's obviously was on his way out of the club a couple of weeks ago, last week, I think it may have been, and he's back. So for him, it's just about being professional now and seeing what happens. But we'll see how it goes with him.
Yeah. On the subject of Celtic youth products, Tony's written a piece for the website today, which I'll put the link to in the comments, basically suggesting that the hiring of Harry Kewell as a first-team coach could potentially prompt a turnaround in fortunes for Mikey Johnston. The premise that Johnston's capable of such a turnaround will probably divide opinion. But what's your view on it? Does there appear to be an avenue for that, or is it more likely that he maybe finally gets a loan spell rather than anything else?
It's a tricky one. I mean, this is maybe the third or fourth pre-season that I've been on where I've had a conversation with a Celtic manager about Mikey Johnston, and it seems to be, and we said this to Ange last night, in pre-season he looks great, and in games sometimes during the season he looks great. I don't think there's any doubting the talent that Mikey Johnston possesses, and he showed it last night, albeit, as we say, Frank, against the kind of poor opposition. But there just seems to be a kind of variety of factors that always end up conspiring against him. Now, but chiefly you've got to say that's been injuries, and it's been very unlucky. He picked up the hamstring injury this time last year against Bristol City, really hampered his season. But I kind of get the feeling it's now or never for Mikey. You look at Celtic now and there's real strength in those attacking positions, and it's whether or not he can kind of take that next step up and really kind of consistently, contribute to the first team. I have my doubts, I've got to say. I think, unfortunately, I think he's a really talented boy, but I think it might seem strange to say this with a winger because, when he's on the ball, he's attacking guys and he's obviously taking the game to them. But I think there's a wee lack of confidence in Mikey now. I think it's been knocked out of him a wee bit just with things that have happened to him. And I wonder if he believes that he's got what it takes to kind of kick on to the next level. And maybe just a kind of somewhere he can go and play regularly will give him that confidence back, because I think Celtic at the minute, he's not going to play in front of Jota. He's not going to play perhaps in front of Maeda, who can play out on the left as well. So I think at very best he's probably third in that position, and he might just have to take a wee step back in order to take a step forward.
The other thing to consider with him is that he's under contract until 2025. So there's still a long way to go on his deal. He is 23 now, obviously, and you kind of touched on it there, but the viewers will be sick of me pointing it out. But the amount of injuries he's had, to me, means in real football progression terms, he's essentially younger than that. In terms of practicality, again, you touched on it there, Jota and Maeda are ahead of him in the race for starting at left wing. Even looking at the opposite flank where he doesn't play right wing, but even if you look to try and get him in there, Jota again would be ahead of him because he regularly played there in the run-in so that Maeda could get in the team as well. And then you've got James Forrest and Leila Abada. Then we've kind of touched on them now. Moffat and Rocco Vata will be attempting to put themselves into Postecoglou's thoughts as well. So it isn't going to be easy. I do take Tony's point in his article. I think that Harry Kewell can have an impact. I just wonder if it's going to end up that it's got to be a loan spell to get that game time that he just isn't getting.
Yeah, I think that might be the best solution, I've got to be honest. I think Ange wants to carry a big squad, but in terms of Mikey, I take your point on board there. He's not played a lot of football considering his age and considering how long he's been around that first team picture. So yeah, I mean, I agree. I think alone, I think it's got to be in the Premier. Certainly in the Premiership. I think that'd be a great move for him. Somewhere like, I don't know, maybe a Hibs and maybe not Aberdeen, because Adam Montgomery struggled up there last year. But yeah, I just think somewhere at this level and just get him regular games would be the best thing for him at this age.
When there was reports in January that he was going to be going potentially to Aberdeen, I actually thought that would have been a great move for him. I obviously stayed up there for 6 years or so. I saw Ryan Christie going up there and making potentially the best of a loan move that's been made in the last few years. He came back and broke into a team that had dominated the league, which is no mean feat, and I think kind of gets overlooked sometimes. You had Chris Ayer going to Kilmarnock and stuff. Further back, you had Cal McGregor going to Notts County and stuff. But I think in terms of within Scotland, Christie and Ayer are the two that kind of stick out for me as having come back and actually made an impact on the first team. But obviously, for the fact that Jota was injured and there was obviously the injury kind of concerns in general in January, the Mikey Johnston loan move didn't come to fruition. I think it would have benefited him if it did. I think it still could, basically. Again, the fact that he's 23, it's not as important to me as how much he's actually got in him. And the game time that he's had in him means that he's a lot younger than that in my mind, and needs to get that somewhere. He might not get it at Celtic. In fact, I'd say he probably won't get it at Celtic just now. So I think, a loan move probably makes sense. There's a lot of comments to that effect coming in as well. But yeah, I mean, to actually get to the headline of what I've called this video, I'm sure it's something that the viewers wonder about regularly. So I'm going to ask you about what it's like to be on pre-season tour with Celtic. I suppose to start with, talk us through your week so far. When did you leave Glasgow? What was it at the same time as the players? Same flight? Was it your own way? Or?
No, we were planes, trains, and automobiles. Unfortunately,
I thought so.
Don't get the same luxuries as the players. But so we've been out here since Monday. So we flew to Heathrow and then on to Vienna. The players are staying in a place called Bad Erlach, which is a very rural town. It's a town of kind of 3,000 people, and it's very spread out the town as well. So where the training base is, it's about a 50-minute drive south of Vienna, and it's stunning countryside. The setting's unbelievable. It's fantastic. The Celtic players are staying, obviously. There's a big luxury hotel. There's thermal spas down here, so that's why the hotel's there. And there's a lovely wee ground, the Bad Erlach Sport Arena. It's got a couple of really nice pitches. So Celtic have been training on one and then playing on the one that's got the wee pavilion last night. So the weather's been a wee bit changeable. It's been really warm, but there's been thunderstorms and stuff like that. So the first time we went up to see the guys at the training centre, it was actually chucking it down. So you seen the guys kind of joking, like, why have we come all the way? It's just come all the way over here. But it's really, really quiet, really chilled out. The locals have been great with them. The Celtic players are wandering about the town undisturbed. Pretty much in between sessions and meetings, they can do what they please, So I think it's a really relaxed environment.
I take it you structure your days around things like the Celtics training and stuff and getting the kind of access and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So you just liaise with the club, and then when they don't want us down there all the time, pestering them, obviously. But so when you go down, they'll give us a bit of time with some players and with the manager and things like that. And yeah, they've been really accommodating. So can only thank them for that. Because I think they know there's a big interest in what they're doing. I mean, they've got double sessions down there every day. And it's really intense stuff. What I would say is, what I did notice when I was down watching training on Monday was the session was really short. It was maybe 50 minutes at the most, the morning session, and then another one in the afternoon. And the caveat to that would be the players didn't stop moving for the whole entire time, So it's 50 minutes of real short, sharp, intensive work they were doing. And then they were getting a break, a bit of lunch, and then coming back out and doing it all over again, So yeah, I mean, it's really great to be here. It's a real privilege to see the players in a more kind of relaxed way. A lot of the times you see them at press conferences and it's very kind of staged and they're very mindful of what they're saying and all that kind of thing. But you see a different side to them down here. And I think the thing that's been really evident for me, getting that kind of privileged access, is seeing how relaxed and how much they enjoy each other's company. And I think that's been a key thing in terms of the success of Angie's team, is how close they are. And even Bernabe now, who's obviously one of the new boys, last night it was noticeable in the first couple of minutes. He wins the ball high up the pitch, and all the other guys, the international players, were sitting beside us, and they were all up cheering it like a goal, and he was kind of laughing, kind of embarrassed. But yeah, they just seem really close, a really good bunch of guys, and it's a real privilege to get this kind of close to them during this time of year.
That word you used there about relaxed, that's what I was going to ask you actually. The whole mood surrounding Celtic this whole pre-season so far seems a lot more relaxed than previous seasons. Is that something you can feel over there just now, as much as you mentioned about the kind of seeing the players in a natural environment, but the whole vibe from like the coaching staff and Ange Postecoglou as well, is that something that clearly is the case?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a kind of quiet determination, I think is the way I would probably characterize it. The guys are really kind of chilled out on their downtime, but you see them when it's time to get down to business, they're very much, getting into the work that they're here to do. I think what's probably striking about this summer compared to last summer is that, there isn't this sort of state of flux that there was when we were down in Newport last year with Celtic, not quite as picturesque as Vienna, but at that point, Celtic had a squad of really young players that they were using for the games, and there was a kind of adjoining party of experienced boys who were on the way out the door, and everybody knew it. And Ange was just in the door as well, so the vibe was very different. It was very kind of, there was sort of two camps within the camp, if you like. Whereas this time it's just one big kind of happy camp. As everyone seems very, very relaxed and very together, and I think that's settled kind of, vibe around the place. And the fact that Ange is only really having to add one or two more bodies now, I think will really help Celtic at the start of the season, and also avoid the kind of, chaotic start that they had to the season last year.
You mentioned that there. That's my next question. You spoke to Ange Postecoglou for a bit after the match last night, and he said he's actively looking for one or two more players, didn't he? Was there any hints as to what positions in particular? Or?
No specifics in terms of positions, but yeah, I mean, I think we can read between the lines of what he's saying. I think a defensive midfielder is one that interests him. We did put to him about Vinicius Souza, and you don't need to be, a kind of body language expert to determine what he thought. So what he said was, as he says consistently, if he ever gets to a point with a player where he feels as if they're not desperate to come to Celtic, then he's more than happy to walk away. And I think that's kind of the point he's getting to with Souza at the moment. So, yeah, he didn't mention specifics, but I think also a lot will depend on what happens with Chris Julian. Yeah. If he stays, then maybe they won't look into the market for another centre-half. But if he does go, which appears likely, I think another centre-half as well will be coming in.
I've got the full quote there. I took a wee note of it. He said, there's a lot of good players out there, but are they a good fit for our football club? Do they want to be at our football club? Do they want to be here? If I get a sense that doesn't happen to be the case, then we're happy to move on to the next one. I think the Vinicius Souza been CC'd into that particular message.
I think they call that in the tabloid trade a veiled dig, don't they? It seems to be that, he's kind of losing patience because listen, the guy's got options and it's going to happen. Now and again, you're going to maybe miss out on a target or two. But in terms of the squad, that I don't think he's all that bothered if he doesn't get Souza. There'll be other guys in the list there that he can go to. And as I say, the one thing he does want is people who are desperate to play for the club. And if that's not the case, then Celtic will move on.
See, on Vinicius Souza, I wrote a wee bit about the loan system in general, kind of mentioning him too for the newsletter yesterday, and I do feel it's a strange one because there's a lot of kind of, not criticism, but a lot of doubts about the fact that it seems that if he was to come to Celtic, it would be on loan, but it would be without the obligation or the option to buy. Now, to me, if it's felt that Souza would essentially be the missing piece of the jigsaw for Europe, I'm not saying he is, but if Postecoglou were to feel that way, then I don't necessarily think that a loan without the option to buy is necessarily a deal breaker when it's just for one player. I don't particularly like it from a Celtic perspective because I do agree that it's not the ideal situation when you're ostensibly building for the longer term. You'd much rather the Jota situation or even the Maeda one. But one instance of it, taking one player on loan without the option or the obligation to buy, is a stark difference from the likes of 2020-21. when they ended the season with 3 of the back 4 as loanees. What's your thoughts on it in general? Not necessarily with Sousa, but just in general. Do you think they should be averse to a loan without the obligation or the option?
On the surface of it, I don't think it would hurt too much if it was only limited to sort of 1 or 2 players. However, I do think that just looking at the business that Celtic have done under Ange, it seems to be the line in the sand, and I wonder if this is maybe the sticking point in the Sousa deal, because I think Ange is very reluctant to take someone on where the club don't have that, insurance, I guess. Because you look at what would happen, if Jota comes in and does what he did last season, and then Celtic didn't have that agreement already in place, would he still be at Celtic? I don't know. There was other clubs hovering there, so the player, it may have been taken out of the player's hands.
I suggest it probably would have been. I don't think Benfica would have asked for the 6.3 million, but no, I take your point. I think that the only thing with me is it's almost, and again, I'm not saying this is Sousa, but if there is one player that Ange Postecoglou says, right, he could actually make a difference, the only way to get him is on loan without the option or obligation to buy. I don't think it's necessarily a deal breaker if you get into it with your eyes open that, right, he's not going to be our player if he plays the way that I think he will. And there's an element of kind of biting your nose off to spite your face, in my opinion. I'm not saying Sousa is that guy. I just think I wouldn't necessarily rule out a loan without that. Ideally, there would be, though.
For me, it would have to be a real outstanding player to kind of break that. I think if once you've made the decision, you're going to go down that way. If you're going to stray from it, it's got to be somebody that's going to make a real difference. So I mean, I kind of agree with what Rab's saying there. I think this is a smarter way to do business, and I just think this is the way Celtic will be doing it from now on.
Yeah, Rab McCune's comment for the podcast listeners later on: if there is no option to buy, it ain't for me. Walk. I think a lot of people would agree with that, Rab. And to be honest, I'm not even disagreeing with it myself, because I'm not saying Sousa's that man. Just that, if you, as you said, Graeme, if it was an outstanding talent, there's no doubt he's going to be out with Celtic's kind of range without getting it on loan, then fair enough. But there's a few comments coming in just before we wrap it up, including Sean Ross's Boris Johnson is now a free agent. I think we've got enough right wingers, Sean, but that's fine. No, I think we'll wrap it up there. Next is Rapid Vienna on Saturday, though, Graeme. Looking forward to that. Very much an immediate step up in class. Yeah,
it'll be a huge step up. And I think the Celtic team will reflect that. The international boys will come back into the fray. I think you'll see like Callum McGregor and all these boys coming back in. It'll be interesting to see. I think Rapid are a decent team. Celtic have a bit of previous with them as well. And even for friendlies, it tends to be quite tasty at their ground. So I am really looking forward to that. And it's a nice big new stadium as well. So it'll be good to get out with the kind of, as nice as the village is, it'll be nice to see them in civilization. So I think that'll be an interesting step up. And it might be interesting to see who's impressed Ange enough on Wednesday to kind of keep in the team as well. Maybe if 1 or 2 youngsters get another run out.
Nice one. Okay, I think we'll call it there for today, I reckon. We'll catch up with you again next week, Graeme.
Yeah, no problem.
Thanks for your comments as always, guys. Thanks for joining us, Graeme. And remember, we're running the £3 for 3 months deal on the website. Appreciate it if you give us a go. And myself and Tony will be back tomorrow, so we'll see you all then. Cheers.
Cheers.